Choose your attempt at friendship.
Everybody ready to start? You guys, the filmer's ready? Well, are you guys good? Do I need to hit?
It's recording.
Oh, great. Got the stumbling there.
Thank you.
So, hi everyone. My name's Thomas Barrow. The talk is getting started with Steam VR 2.0. This will be done in Unity. I guess I probably should have put that on there because I tried talking to people doing, a lot of people do Unreal Engine. I want to start off with getting kind of an idea of where everyone's at developing in VR, if at all. It's fine if you haven't. Obviously, it says getting started. So, has anyone developed a game, even if it's just like prototype fun stuff, for VR? Sweet. You guys do it in Unity?
Yeah.
With Oculus?
Yes.
So you did Steam VR?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Anybody else? Nobody else? Okay, so who here has experience with Unity? So a lot of people, the majority. Okay, great. So the goal of this talk was to get people from the input of the VR to what you already should know in Unity, even if you don't know it yet. But those are other tutorials and other talks to, how do I spawn an enemy, or how do I do gliders, or whatever, right? The talk of this, or the purpose of this talk is to get you through how do I set this up as input, right, instead of a mouse, right, and keyboard. So that's the goal of this. So feel free to stop me anytime, ask any questions. So here's some prerequisites for the setup that I'm doing, and I'll talk about what else you can substitute as we go through here. So hardware, you're going to need some VR device and a VR-capable computer. I have a 1060 in here, I think, which is fine. If you want to start developing one that's running Unity and developing a VR, you're going to want something higher than just a VR spec, base spec, like a 960. You might be pushing it a little bit. Still do it, still be fine. You just might have kind of a rough time with it. I have an HTC Vive, and when you're developing, you obviously want it connected and you want it on. You want to test it beforehand, so power it on and just go through the Steam VR should pop up right away when you power it on. You can do that with controllers, or if it's an Oculus, same idea, you power it on. It should pop up whatever the proprietary software for your hardware is. It may prompt you to install it, whatever. Go through your initial setup for this and test it. Hey, I'm in my little home area and I can see my controllers, right? I have started developing before, and be like, why isn't this working? And it's because I didn't test it before. Oh, my controller firmware was out of date. And just a huge hassle. Always make sure you do the little checklist boxes beforehand. Software you're going to want, for this case, I'm doing Steam VR 2.0, right? You can download older versions of Steam VR. You just go to their GitHub, right? Go to their older versions. And in a lot of cases, you may want to do that, and I'll talk about that later. For this talk, I'm talking about Steam VR 2.0 and how that's changed. So, if you want to use Steam VR 2.0, you have to have Unity 18.3 or higher later, right? Obviously, you need Steam VR installed. That we will do through Unity, which I can show you. And then these two other pieces on the bottom here, OpenVR and the player settings XR supported, are, let's say after this talk, like, wow, that was great, I want to go do that. And you go home and you forget everything, like I always do whenever I go to a talk, right? Oh, he said this, I know, but I forgot everything, right? So you go up and you open up a tutorial. So I'm going to follow the steps on the tutorial. And oh, he says to do this and he says to do that, and then it's still not working. And you're like, why is this not working? A lot of the times, I would say probably 50% of the tutorials skip these bottom two steps. These are things that you have to do in Unity to set up before you start developing in any kind of VR, whether it's Oculus or whatever. OpenVR is the kind of wrapper package that they have over the C++ library. And then the player settings XR supported. You just go to edit, go to player settings, and there's at the very bottom there should say an XR, which stands for VR, AR, all the whatever realities, right? And there's a thing that's just a little checkbox that says, do you want to enable it? That is by default turned off, right? So you just click that button. And then the OpenVR, I can show you how to install that as well. But a lot of tutorials that I've gone through have just skipped those, and then you're like, there's a bunch of compiler errors, and I don't know why. And then other basic Unity knowledge. Like I said, I'm not going to be going over anything about that. So I'm going to get you to that point. So setting up a scene. So you're going to let's open up Unity, right? And let's start fresh, right? Actually, let's just do a new scene. Starts off with the main camera, right? You are not going to be using a main camera, so you can go ahead and delete that right away. You're going to go to your game asset store and get Steam VR. This is how I do it. If this takes too long, I'll skip this. I don't know how the internet is going to be here. Alright, Steam VR should pop with the first one. That's your plugin. You're going to grab that. You're going to import it. I'll go back to the other scene perhaps. And then another thing I said was, go to, nope, not your assets store, you go to your package manager. This is where this is how you install the OpenVR package. In this case, it's already installed for me, but you would do it there. And then, like I said, edit, player settings, check that XR button down at the bottom here. So in my case, it's checked. That is not checked by default. Okay, let's go back to my other scene here. I don't want to have to import that. It will take a while. Once you import it, it'll have this SteamVR package will pop up in your assets, right? The first thing you want to do if you want to start fresh, I'll talk about this later about how, let's say, all of that sounded great, I don't want to go through that trouble. I want someone else, somewhere on the asset source, someone has done this. Anything you ever do in Unity, someone's probably done it in a different way at least, right? You could go to the asset store and either get it for free or pay for money. So I'll show you a lot of different people. I'll just kind of give you my ideas of what I think are some good ones that I've used that have been really helpful. But if you do want to do it yourself, you can go to prefabs in the SteamVR, and there'll be a camera rig, and this is going to have your headset, which they call an HMD, right? And they'll have your two controllers in it. And if my computer's not too slow. Oh yeah, so when you drag in the camera, it'll start up SteamVR if you have it installed. So I can quit that right now because I'm not going to run it. So like I said, your camera rig, it's got your controllers all prefabbed out for you, which is nice. You also have to throw in SteamVR. So if you guys have experience, you guys know this. If you don't, that's the beginning step. All right. You want to start the scene, and I didn't think about the fact that there's only one HMD, so if I plug in my headset, you're not going to be able to see anything. So I'll just talk about this, and if you have any questions, what will I be seeing in Unity, right? What should I see? Then feel free to ask me, and if you guys want, at the end of this talk, I'm not planning on going a full hour. I know Microsoft wants to come in and set up some stuff. We can come, you guys can put it on, and we'll test out anything that you guys want to test out. And also, I'll have time afterwards we can go out in the hallway or whatever. We'll figure it out. But yeah, like I said, test your tracking. So, let's talk about how you start off. SteamVR 2.0 abstracts the input. So it doesn't matter what hardware you're going to use. You can plug something else in, whether it's a Windows Mixed Reality, well, anything that's supported, right? Windows Mixed Reality, Oculus, HTC Vive, I know are all three that I've either seen used or used myself. I haven't used the Oculus one, I've seen the ones. So let's go to Windows. When you have SteamVR, you can go to the SteamVR input. All right, and if it's default, your first time opening it, it's going to pop up this warning. It looks like you're missing a JSON file, which is your actions. Would you like to use an example? I always click yes. You can always modify it later. So, it's not like full screen very well, is it? I know it's kind of hard to see probably in the back, so let me kind of point it out. The way this uses it has action sets. So you can have basically, these are my sets of, this is what I want to be. Like, let's say I want to be in a scene, I want the player to be able to jump, shoot, and, juggle or something, grab objects and juggle. But in another scene, let's say he goes into the mind of the piano player, and he's just sitting on the piano. And all I want to be able to do is touch things. I don't need him to be able to teleport around or move. You can make an action set that says, all right, here's my teleport, here's my jump, here's my shoot, here's my move, and I want this on the trigger, and I want this on the trackpad or whatever. And that'd be one action set, and when you load this other scene or you go to this other spot, you can deactivate that action set and activate another action set, right? Which has a completely set of different controls. Not necessarily, you could have one action set that has all these controls, right? And that would be okay, I guess, but then you're allowing the player to do things which you may not want them to do, and you have a lot of bloats, it's a lot of bloated file over there, where you have a lot of extra things that you're not going to utilize, right? So trim down these action sets to only what you need. It comes with defaults, which is interacting with the UI, you've got a teleport, you have a grab pinch, and you have a grab grip. Pose is necessary. I would say if you're beginning out, just don't mess with pose, just leave it there. Same thing with skeleton, left hand and right hand. Squeeze, and the headset, I wouldn't mess with that. And then there's output of haptic, which is just vibration, right? If you guys don't know what haptic means, it's going to vibrate the controller, essentially. And you can send signals to that to do that. Okay, so you'll see on these that they have a type. And that's just when you're in code, what type of information is going to be returned from this input device. So in a teleport case, I'm saying there's going to be something from this controller. I haven't told it what it is, but something from this controller is going to send a signal, and it's going to be of the type of Boolean. And I'm naming that thing teleport. I know it's a little confusing, but we'll see how it connects in a minute. And it can be a vector 2, it can be a single vector 1, which is just like a scalar, right? Vector 3, again, I wouldn't mess with pose if you're beginning, but it is needed. So you do have to have the action pose in there. And then skeleton I wouldn't mess around with either. So your first time, you're going to want to save and generate because you don't have those JSON values, or JSON files. Those are going to put them in, I believe they put them in your root file. So if you're ever looking at those, I want to go mess with that file manually, right? I want to go mess around with some XML style code or whatever, JSON. You can, it's in the root directory, I believe. It might be in the packages. I'm not sure. So then, should save and generate. You should be all good. You should see something down here. It tells you kind of, oh, I put this action set, and that's possible to see for you guys, but it tells you where it goes. Then we're going to open up our binding UI. Let me make sure I'm not skipping anything here. Yeah, there's 3 action sets by default. I guess I didn't mention that. It's part of, that's right thing. Sure, read it. These action sets appear where you can like add in, so platformer, I'm not going to be doing a platformer, so you can minus and delete it, right? Get rid of all this extra files that you're not going to need. A buggy is like a little remote control car that they have in a default scene. And mixed reality I leave in there just in case I want to swap to Windows mixed reality, and sometimes I actually do use that. Otherwise, just default. So then you can save and generate. So get rid of all those. It says, hey, you're not using these action sets. Do you want to delete them? Sure. All right, again, I'm a big fan about trimming things down. So like when SteamVR, if you are too, if you want to go to SteamVR, when you import SteamVR, it has a ton of stuff in here that you don't need. It's got a lot of example scenes and all that stuff. So I always usually go out and trim that. If you do that with all your assets, it's going to blow up your project file size real fast. So we talked about actions on the left, input and output. So we talked about the types. We'll see how those are used later. And like I said, clean it up, right? So if you're not going to use the interaction UI, delete it. I almost never use both grabs. I almost always use just one grab. I don't want to like try to pinch and squeeze. So, but if you do, fine. We'll see later as we start seeing how these are used. You may want more. You can always add them back in. Like I said, do not delete pose. There are some tutorials out there that tell you to delete pose. It will cause you problems, at least at where it is now. And maybe those tutorials happened before an update, and now pose, or then it was okay to delete pose. Do not delete pose. It caused me a lot of issues, at least. I like to rename the grab something, whatever you want. You can rename them anything. Just remember what they are, right? And save and generate. So then we're going to open up our UI binding. So let's see what that looks like. Again, this is in Window, not Live Input, Steamer. And we open up our binding UI. Should open up in a browser, maybe it did. Yeah. It's maybe because I don't have it connected. I really hope that's not the case. Let's see what SteamVR is telling me. Alright. I'm going to need to show you this. This is going to be awkward if I have to take off the HMI.
Do you have a VGA for the TV?
Well, I would, but I don't have a VGA on my laptop, so.
I got an adapter.
Do you? Let me see. I mean, I don't have a cord for it, but I'm assuming it does have one VGA input. It doesn't?
Can't help you.
Wow. No, on the side, probably. No, it does not. Okay. Interesting. Alright, let's see if whatever my laptop is stopped freaking out. It's not. Alright, let me just close out Unity and open it up again. I can talk about the slides as we go on here. I really don't want to do that without showing it to you guys, since it is kind of if it's your first time opening up, it's kind of an interesting. It scared me when I opened it up. I did not know they had updated to SteamVR 2.0, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm just going to make a little SteamVR game, no problem. And I was like, this is completely different. So.
What is?
Let me open up a good scene. Or a good project, I say. See if this one has any problems. Don't understand what that issue is. It is saying it's mad that the HUD isn't, it isn't, okay. Oh, I'm sorry to do this, guys. Maybe I can just bring the laptop around, I guess. That's really frustrating. But it's upset that it can't register the HUD, which is just the VR headset. Which it does make sense. When you do open this, you do have to have whatever controller it is that you're trying to, okay, so that's good. This is going to be interesting.
Good enough.
Yeah, I mean, this is rough, but let's see if it freaks out now. It's not registering my. Alright, so yeah, that's all it was. Okay.
Is it still plugged into the monitor?
No. I mean, it's not, that's not going to be registering, which is sad. This should. That shouldn't look full. This should be controller binding. Base stations are set up wrong. I would say that 50% of my problems are hardware related on this. Yeah. No, thank you very much. Okay.
An absolute hero. Come on, save me.
So if you have to have a headset plugged into each computer you're developing on, if you were having a team of multiple people working on multiple different computers, you have to have a desktop or I have a Vive plugged into each one at all times?
So yeah, that's a really good question. No, you do not. Well, it depends. There is a SteamVR application somewhere, and I think it's somewhere. I think it's in the SteamVR package that simulates basically input from a VR headset, right? So you can like turn that on, and basically you can use WASD keys, or you can plug in a controller if you want, and it maps and says, oh, this is like moving forward. Moves would be like the character walking forward, right? So it simulates that, and I'm sure you could just essentially Google, I want to simulate without using a VR headset, being in VR, and it'll pop up.
Is that how you typically do
No,
it?
that is not. And I would advise against that unless you absolutely have to do that. I mean, and sometimes you will, right? But I would advise against it. This may just be because the headset's not over there with the, says the base stations are not being read, which is very sad. I'll try this one last time, and if I can't get it, then I'll just pull it up on the web and show you images of it. Okay. Let me just go find an image of it. SteamVR2 UI binding. We'll just talk about it. I don't want a video though. Just want an image. There we go. This will have to do for now. No more mouse. Okay.
Yeah, but
It's
a
got
second
it on
monitor instead of
display to
your-
extend, doesn't it? Whew. Look at this. It's fighting me. The reason why I would say don't do that, don't use, if you can avoid it, don't use that, is because these things are very finicky, and it is hard to understand what it feels like for the user unless you have it on and are experiencing it. When you're in VR, for instance, I'll show people, like the first time they're playing VR, I'm like, oh, you should do this roller coaster, if you like roller coasters, right? And you'll watch it on the screen, and you're like, oh yeah, that looks cool, you're like doing a roller coaster, and then you put it on, and you'll fall over. If you feel that surge in your stomach, right? So a lot of times, like the first game I did, I was like, I'm gonna do a flying game. That'll be so sweet. I was flying through the air, right? That'll be awesome, right? And I was doing it, and I was like, oh yeah, it looks really good. And then I put it on, and I like almost threw up, right? I was like, oh god. I mean, it is very visceral. And if you're doing just small development, then okay, that's fine. Oh yeah, that's right. I wanted to go to the desktop. But if you're doing If you're doing like experiential type of things like that, where you're going to like really manipulate the player, throw them around, stuff like that, definitely put the headset on and try it out before you send somebody in there. You will throw up. You know what? Let's just. I don't want to run out of time here, so we'll just have to make do. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions kind of like that that pop up. I plugged in the wrong one. That's hilarious. I don't want to run out of time because the ending is kind of what I think the most important part. I mean, this is all interesting, but if you want to like, the best thing about our Unity is you get a lot of bang for your buck. You can get in there and someone new as user can like build something that they can see and fun. And if you want to do that with VR, this is not the way you're going to do it. I just wanted to, if you did want to get your feet wet, right? Okay. So let's pretend that I pressed that button and it popped up magically like it was supposed to do, right? This is the thing you'll see. It may look different, like for you Oculus guys, you'll have your controller obviously, right? And actually there'll be a screen before this that says, do you want to edit this controller? Or if it registers another one, do you want to register this controller? So in case of mine, it was the Vive, and I would click this and think, okay, here's my Vive. So it'll have all the buttons which are physically on your controller. So in this case, you got the trackpad, which is here. You've got a trigger, which is down here. And if you want to see those, you can. There's a screen before this, I think, which has like specifically, this is the trigger, this is the button, this is the menu, this is the grip, right? All of those things will be, see, they're minimized over here. So, like those actions that we had, like so we had that teleport action that we had. You can say, all right, I want them to teleport when I hit the trackpad. So you'll go to trackpad, and you'll say, where it is here, there'll be a plus sign if you want to add another one. Right now they're editing one, it looks like. So there'll be a plus sign if you wanted to add something. So I want to add it like, there'll be a menu that says button, or there'll be a menu that says squeeze, or like UI. There's a bunch of different ways that these can register. Like you can get vector 2 information off this of where the finger is, right? So that would be different than a press, which is also a button. So let's say I plus there, I was like, I want a button. When I press it, they do the teleport action. Okay? You put plus in there, and you say button, select button, and then over here, you'll click that, and you'll be able to choose all of those actions from the file we showed before. Whether it was grab, grip, grab, pinch, whatever you decided to name them. So in our case, let's say teleport, so we put teleport on there. Okay, so now anytime they push this as a button, it will call that teleport action in Unity. And then the next step is, well, how do I connect that to code? How do I access that from a script, right? So let's talk about that. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything from my slides. Let's say for teleport. Okay, so now we're going to get into the script. So you create a script, and let's do one for controllers, which I brought up here. CBR, go away. Alright. Boy, without a mouse, it's kind of difficult. The only thing that's different about a script is when you create a script, and like you create a script just like you would in Unity, like again, I'm not going to go over that, but you create a script, and the only thing you want to do is say using valve.vr, right? So this will give you access to all the methods that you'll need. It's going to still do for mono behavior. I haven't messed around with doing with the ECS. I don't know if anyone's done ECS programming here yet. Does anyone? No? Does anyone know what that is? Entity component system? Okay, great. I have not done ECS in VR, but that would be an interesting topic. Okay, so SteamVR input sources. I know it's probably a little hard to see, but SteamVR input sources is basically, it's a type of class that can be any kind of input source that it's getting. So it could be from the controllers, it could be from HMD, it could be from like HTC does little hockey pucks, which are additional sensors, right? So you put them on your feet, you put them on your waist, tracks you around, right? So you'll need that to expose to grab some input source, which will set in the inspector, which is why it's public, where you can do private and serialized inspector. Yeah, that's some of these stuff. Okay. So we'll need to have that. So I need to be able to access one of these. Then for the teleport button, it's just a button. It's either press or not. So it's going to be a Boolean. So it'll say SteamVR_action_Boolean. This API, I'll talk about where this stuff is all documented at the end. I'll give you those resources, and if anyone wants this talk, I'll give it to you so you can just look them up real quick. All right. Again, there's a ton of them. There'll be like action Boolean, action vector 2, all those types that we saw, pose, right, skeleton. But in our case, we just probably want a Boolean, and when you're starting out, it's probably good enough. So for instance, this one I made for teleport button. There's also another one I made for grab, and you can put it on this one, or if you want to do in the binding, you can put it on the grip. It's fairly common. And then in the update, this is a terrible way to do it, but this is the naive, 30-second coding, getting it in there. Put it in the update, and you poll, right? You never want to poll for input. That's really bad. You usually want to use an event-based system when you register, but if you're starting out, this is totally fine. It's not going to slow anything down. So in the update, you say, okay, on my teleport button, I want to say, is it down? And I want to say which hand. Is it talking about this input source or this input source? And it's gonna look for whatever one you put in the inspector. It's gonna look for, is that down? Is my teleport button down? And if it is, I just printed off something here, but in this case, this is where you would do your normal Unity stuff. So I would say transport the player +5 in the forward direction, or right. This is where you could do whatever you want. Or it could be, instead of teleport, you could say shoot. It's like, okay, I want to shoot here. So when it does this on the update, now you can say spawn bullet and do your normal Unity stuff, right? So this is the point where we've connected the actions, we opened up the bindings and connected those actions we made to this. And this is the other side of it, where we connect this to the code to your normal Unity knowledge. Now we can start doing fun things, right? And that's it. Again, please use event-based instead of polling-based, but just for demonstration, it's fine. So then you want to go into Unity. We've created the scripts. We take a look at that. You want to populate those public variables in the inspector, and we can probably go over that. Again, it's going to be pretty simple. So let's open up a scene we can put our prefabs back in here. So not in core, not prefabs. Let's redo this real quick. I'll put a camera rig. It might take a little bit. Okay. So in this case, add opponent. Let's do a script, and we'll say telegrab. Alright, let's open it up. Please put those in your script folder. Don't put them in the base asset folder, right? Good Unity practices. I'll see if I can just copy this over, actually. See if it yells about the monolithic thing. Global name. Oh, probably the naming convention is wrong. I named it telegrab. This one. Control V, Control V. You guys know Control K, Control D, like auto formats. Visual Studio's code. Oh no. That may just be because we haven't assigned it yet. Let's find out. Okay, so here's where you assign them. So we had the which hand, right? And we want input source, and do we want it to be the left hand or the right hand? These are all the default input sources that Unity will expose to you, or SteamVR will rather. So let's say we wanted teleport to only work, or we've selected the controller on the left here, so this has to be the left hand. So the teleport button, here's all those actions that we had in that folder, right? So we want it to be the teleport, right? So at this point now, whenever I would hit play, I would be able to hit this, and it should print out whatever I set in there, teleport, and it should say left hand, right? Same thing with the grab button, and you get to grab, and then all you have to do is, in that code, this is still yelling at me about the right one, probably. Yeah, no, I didn't put it on there. Singular action boolean. Says it's not set to it. That's because it's played, probably. All of that went away, because it was a classic Unity mistake, right? I was in play doing edits. If you ever want to not have that happen, you can set, when it goes on to play, set it to a different color, your entire Unity inspector. So it's like, normally on my computer when I'm developing at home, it's like red, like everything is red. So I know, don't make changes. My laptop, I forgot to do that. So let's do camera rig, controller, left, active component, telegrab, left, teleport for teleport, grab for grab, and let's see if it's yelling at me now. Oops. Okay, and then again, I don't know why I went through that because I'm not going to show you what this is set up right now. 12:30. Okay. Trust me, we could do it. We could do it afterwards if you guys want to see it. So we populated the public variables in there, and that's the hardest part, is controlling. Now you've got it to your code, and you can do your normal Unity stuff, you can move your guy, whatever. Now let's talk about, I don't want to do all that work, especially for a bunch of different action sets. I wanted different scenes, like one guy, like one game we have where we're roaming around a mansion, and all you have to do is explore and get out of it. Once you get outside of it, you get into a car and you're driving away. Well, now it's a completely different action set. I don't want to be able to teleport, I don't want to be able to grab stuff even. All I want to be able to do is rotate a circular drive, which is the wheel, right, to steer, right, which is a completely different action set. So you're going to have to go in there and do all that work again, which isn't that big of a deal once you've done it 4 or 5 times, but as a beginner, it's frustrating. So here's some great out-of-the-box asset sets that I found that I really enjoyed working with that have a ton of extra stuff that you can do beside what I've talked about here, like when you hover over an object, it highlights it, which is really nice, or when you can highlight buttons, like when you see these in the game, you can say, oh, you can have like a tutorial level that says, press the trackpad, and then you can make the trackpad highlight, right? A lot of simple things like that that you really take advantage, or rather, you don't really think of are great until you're missing them. And they're really hard to do by yourself, actually. At least I think they are. A lot of work. So VRTK, Virtual Reality Toolkit. There's a warning. The last time I checked, at least, it doesn't support SteamVR 2.0. So you will have to go to the GitHub and SteamVR. You will have to download an older version, right, before SteamVR 2.0 in order to get it to work. But it is a great asset. It has a lot of those things I talked about. It's got built-in teleporters or Bezier curves for showing you where you're going to teleport. It's great. VR Startup Kit 2018 is okay. It's a little rough around the edges, but it does everything you want to do. When you get, as soon as you just drop it in there, it's got a player prefab, and you can throw the player prefab in there, and it works, right? You can. It has a thing where you take the controllers, and as you run like this, it moves you forward, right? Which is not that difficult. You just pull the change in X, right, or you change X, Y, the vector, and then if it's more over a certain delta time, then you move them that much in proportion to that much. It's great, and it's really easy to use. Again, it's just a drag and drop player in there. And it should work for SteamVR 2.0, which means it works for this and the Oculus heads, right? In the SteamVR asset yourself, before you trim it down and get rid of all this stuff, go into the interaction system core prefab. So there's a player prefab that'll do the same thing. Again, it's a very drag and drop, really nice thing. And in the interaction system samples, there's a scene. The .unity is a scene that you can open up. And it's got a bunch of the different things you can do with SteamVR, like we talked about. Like it's got a teleport thing where you can press the teleport down. It's got the circular drive thing if you want to do like wheel actions. It's got a linear drive where you're talking about circles. It's got like a planting thing where you can like go down and throw things and flowers pop up and stuff. It's really good. So if you're first getting into it and you want to see what is possible, that would be a good point to start before you figure out how to do it. Just pop in that scene and mess around, right? Possible hiccups, hardware issues, as we saw. That was a little bit of lack of preparation. I didn't realize that we're just going to get another issue BI here. Software abandonment is huge. So, which is basically non-backwards compatibility. So a lot of this stuff is still very fresh, still very actively being developed, and it's very rapidly being developed. So you might find something that you love, which in my case, I loved SteamVR 1.0, and then I came back to it, and they did SteamVR 2.0, and you cannot mix those things, right? You have to port over to the new and do all these action sets, right? Which is fine, but you'll find that happens a lot, especially with like VRTK I loved, and then 2.0 came out, and all of a sudden you can't have the newest of both, right? A lot of tribal knowledge, so a lot of tutorials, like I said, I'll skip over some steps, and the API documentation is very hard to find. You can't just Google, oh, SteamVR, action methods, right? It won't pop you up in the right spot. Maybe I should talk to the Google algorithm about that. These are some excellent resources that I would encourage you to go look through. So it'll save you a bunch of Googling and Wikipedia delving, right? The Valve software GitHub has got some great PDF files in it, which talk about the SteamVR Unity plugin and the input and the interaction system, which I briefly covered here. Again, this is only just getting started. The docs.unity 3D is okay. It's not going to have a lot of specific SteamVR 2.0 stuff in it, but it'll bridge the gap once you get into the code like I showed you here. Now, how can I translate it into the traditional Unity input system to do run crazy things, right? And then the GitHub for Valve software. Well, Max Assets SteamVR. Okay, so that's another PDF file which just talks about the input system, which is the Unity plugin specific one, which is good. I think that's it. If there's any questions, there's going to be questions. I can talk about if there's any specific issues anyone's had that like can't get past this hurdle. I can hopefully, yeah. What's up?
I got two of them for you. One of them being, does the SteamVR asset store the SteamVR that you download from it, does it come with controllers, skeleton, and a mesh for your hands that you
Yes.
see in the thing? So does that mean that I can delete their mesh and I can create my own mesh to come on their skeleton?
You could. Let me show you. So, in the SteamVR package right here, prefabs, right? So you'll bring in your normal camera rig, and again, it'll have, that's annoying, let me just close that. I think it should pop up a little, yeah. So they have a bunch of, like, if you want to use models, you can just throw these on, again, the render of the, if you expose the control left, there'll be a model right underneath it, right? Which is what it uses, right? So in that case, it looks like it's, so it's using a SteamVR render model script, and it's got some standard shader on there for them. Again, you can pop these models. You should be able to pop these models right underneath, replacing the model, the default that it's got on there. So it shouldn't be hard. I personally have not done that. I know on Oculus, I think you guys should be able to do it too. You can't do it with these Vive, but they have the knuckles. I don't know if they're out yet. I haven't messed with them yet. But those, you'll see when we talked about the component, the window, SteamVR input, these skeleton hands, those are used for kind of figuring out where your fingers might be, your hands might be, right? So when you, it's getting a little deep, but when you can set up different skeleton like poses with these hands, right? So like I want this like half grip, and I want this like full grip, and I want this like out, right? And you can assign those. Okay, when you can assign this to certain objects, like, okay, if I'm going to grab this cylinder object, the pose should be half grip, and then it'll look like your hand is perfectly over there, even though it doesn't track your fingers, right? So it's a kind of a clever little system. It doesn't work with the normal Vive ones, sadly. But it does work, it should work with your Oculus, and I haven't done that, like I said, and it should work with the knuckles as well. So that's an interesting little thing. That will be covered in some of those resources that I talked about. They talk about how to do that. That's an interesting little interface that they have that pops up your hands, and you can like click the hand, and it's really nice. In the editor, it will pop up that model of what it will look like, even though it's not actually in the scene, right? And it kind of shows you what it's like, and then you can choose the one you want, and you can actually create your own, which is really nice. You know, I want to mesh my hand a little bit more, drag this finger more, and set that to where whatever object you wanted to be grabbing for, or whatever input. And then it's really nice. You make sure that you save it, because I've not done that before and then lost all my work. And then it'll take the little image off, and then you have it set up, and then you can test it in game later. But it's really nice. It's a really nice interface to have. So SteamVR. Yes, you can do that. You had a second question.
When you were opening your Unity, I saw a couple of past projects that you did not touch over, and one of them read as a echo scripting test or something along those lines. And
ECS.
I was wondering if that was related to a different SteamVR game project.
That was not. That was. I was messing around with a newish entity component system, which I remember someone said you've done stuff with it.
I've been to the lectures about it.
Okay.
Looked at it.
It is different.
Yeah.
And it's not just different like, oh, VR is different. We got to add stuff. It it's completely different from your normal model behavior Unity scripting, and it is great. It is very different.
Lots of fun.
What? Lots of fun?
Lots of files.
Yeah. It's a little more hard to navigate, I guess you should say, in the editor. Maybe. It depends on how your brain works, I guess. So, do you guys want me to talk about a little bit of that? It won't be long, like 2 minutes, but I don't want to get off topic because that is a separate topic. Okay, we're cool. So ECS stands for Entity Component System. So normally the way that Unity works is, right, you have game objects, you'll have game objects on there, and then you'll say, okay, I want a rigid body in this, so add a component rigid body. I'll add a render, well, it already has a render, right? But there'll be all these components, right? So the way that the memory works when Unity does that is it has some game object, and it'll have it somewhere in some heap of memory, right? And then you, let's say, somewhere down the line, you add a component to it. Well, it's not going to be contiguous in memory necessarily. It doesn't do a good job of defragging that and just like putting, okay, my component here is now, here's the memory for that data and that script, and here's the memory for the game object. It's all neatly packed right together, right? So the reason that you want that in anything that you do on a computer is that a CPU does something called prefetching. Whenever a CPU or anything accesses, any GPU accesses a piece of memory in a computer, it does a neat little trick where it prefetches other memory around it, because normally they found out that when you access something as a certain amount of memory, 9 times out of 10 or whatever it is, you use the memory right around it. So it preloads that from disk into cache, usually, or from cache into register as well. And then when it turns out you did need it, boom, it's right there ready for you. And it's a little bit of optimization, which is great, and it speeds up, and no one knows that it happens, right? But it's great. But you'll find out it does. You'll notice it when it doesn't happen. And then or if it misses, like, oh, I didn't need that. Now I've got to go load it, and all of a sudden my Unity's hanging up, right? Anyway, so that's the old system, right? The new system, which they call data-oriented programming instead of object-oriented programming, which a lot of things other than Unity are going towards this. Data-oriented programming is saying, instead of a game object with a bunch of components on it, I'm going to have a script, and all it's going to be is just a structure of data. And it's going to hold here's my x, here's my y, here's my speed, all the normal things that you would have as variables and perhaps on your transform or whatever. So then all of your objects will just be really then being kind of scripts that are holding this data for them. Then you're going to have one script. Let's say, let me give you an example. Let's say we're doing a flock of birds, right? So instead of having a bunch of birds that are game objects with all their own render and all their own movement, right? And then each one's going to need a script on them, right? That says movement. Okay, move, even if it's predetermined, that script, it's got its own thing, right? Instead of that, we're going to have a bunch of script objects, which are a bunch of structs for each bird. Then we're going to have one script which operates, which just says move bird, and it's going to operate on all of those birds, and it's going to do it parallel. Does that make sense? So it's going to be one piece of code, so it's a lot less bloated. You're not going to have a bunch of scripts on each object, you're going to have one. And then it's all going to be parallel, and there's a special method you can call for that to basically access what's called the C# job system, which basically spawns a thread for each of however many birds you have. And that movement script, that thread, runs that movement script on each of those bird structs, so it'll take that X and move Y. So there's a couple of reasons that this is good. One of the reasons is all those scripts, when you shed when it's just the structure and you shed away like the movement script and it's over there by just its one self, now you have a lot less memory use for the object, so there's a lot less copying of things. Another reason, I'm getting a buzz here. Okay, sorry, I got another presentation after this. I want to make sure I'm not getting. We're okay? Will? Okay, potentially. So there's a couple reasons. One is I'll talk about that prefetching, right? We want our data all contiguous, really close packed for each object. It does that in a way that, so like the script that holds that data, all it has is that data. So when I go, let's say the movement script, that one movement script that's accessing all of these, all it needs is the X, Y, and Z probably, and maybe a movement speed, right? So instead of a script accessing a game object's transform, and transform is not just X, Y, Z, right? It's rotation, it's all this other bloated stuff that you don't need, that suddenly you're loading into memory, because that's what the CPU does, right? It tries to get you everything you need. So it's a lot of wasted CPU time that it cuts out. Another thing is, it obviously makes it parallel, right? So if you're moving, instead of having a bunch of game objects that you start up their movement screen at the same time, you have one script and then spawn just threads running just the small piece of code. That's obviously just parallelism, right? Speeding up. Let me think about if I have a picture to show you in my drive that can maybe make that clear. Asymmetry is not it. I don't have it. I don't think. Let's do that. That's all right. Ask me more questions and I'll try to find it while I'm talking here. If there's any other questions.
Do you have any tips on moving from a typical FPS to VR? Like
Yes.
just replacing the camera and input,
Yep.
I'm sure is not.
It can be that easy. It can be that easy. So you're going to have a normal camera, a normal player prefab probably, whatever you have. I mean, in a big prefab, but you have something which is a player and a player controller script. Rip it all out. Okay, you're not going to use any of it. you might want to keep your player controller script, but you can import one of those things. I mentioned those good out-of-the-box assets that I was talking about. I would recommend doing that, not the VRTK, if you want to stay up to date. But put one of those. They should have a player prefab, like I said, in there, and then they should have the motions. And you can say, oh, I don't want the teleport. That should be they're pretty good about having just it's a component on the object. You can just uncheck. Nope, I don't want for teleport. And if you really don't care, you can leave the script on there and just or remove the component if you want. The only thing you'll need to which might be a little bit hard coupling, would be calling the scripts that you do in your FPS. Like my FPS, I click the left button to fire. The only thing you'll need to do is say, instead of my polling for the left button click, you'll do the stuff that I talked about here, and in my telegraph script, instead of polling for the teleport button, you would pull for the trigger, and then just attach on the right side your normal fire bullet, right? Or call your fire button or your routine. Maybe start as a high routine or whatever. You know, it should be that easy. It never is. It never is that easy. But theoretically, it should be that easy. So let me see here. I think I do have a little bit of an ECS thing I might be able to show you. Yeah. I can download this really quick and just show you a cool picture, which may illustrate a little bit that better. Any other questions about? Oh, you had one.
Yeah. Kind of relates to the question earlier about wearing the headset while developing. I mean, that seems like it'd be really hard to hit debug breakpoints and stuff.
Okay.
If you're trying to debug a script and you have to wear the headset and take it on and
Yeah,
off.
that's a good point, and I should have mentioned that. So, thank you. I should have put that in my presentation. Steam VR input live view. Okay, so if you're not, I guess my input earlier about you should wear it was talking about how does my game affect the user. Is it going to make me vomit, right? Which is you don't think is a big deal, but when you put it on, even a slight teleport, even some people get sick just teleporting, right? So that was that. If you want to do debugging, like why is my button not, or why am I not firing when I click the trigger, right? Am I getting this trigger spot? This is where you come to this view here. So you go to Window, it's right underneath where we set up our actions. You go to the live view. Right now it's not connected, so they're not seeing anything, but you can see here, these are the action. I don't know if you can't see, but it breaks it down. Here's our default action set that we talked about. So if I had changed, no, I did change grab. This used to be grab squeeze or something, right? And I changed it to grab at some point. So you'll see there. So then, once I connect it, once I've done everything I had in here, where I connected it, if I press this when I do the binding, I should see that it'll say green, and if it has some float value, it'll put up here. If it's got a vector 2 on it, or whatever it is, you know, it'll tell you what's up here. And it's got your other defaults or action sets. There's platformer, buggy, mixed reality. One thing to note is if you make your own action set that's different than this, you have to call a method. And I can't think of it off the top of my head, I'm so sorry. But it's something like activate secondary something, I can't remember what it is. And that puts it into this, right? So if you do want to use this, but you've made your own action set, be very wary. If it's not there, there's a method you forgot to call on awake or start or whatever, and that's why it's not there. And once you call that method, and again, I'm sorry, I can't think of it off the top of my head. I'm really bad about that. I always have to go look things, methods up again, even simple things. Oh yeah, so the ECS thing. PowerPoint. Here's like an example of like the old game object memory. I was talking about how it can be scattered, right? So it's hard to, and this is kind of a somewhere I can't remember where I pulled this from, but of a comparison of basically old mono behavior and yes. Before people start going, I've got some gift cards to give out. I probably should just. Should I do this? Choose a number. It's supposed to be random. Choose a number. I can think of a number between like 1 and 100. And we can go through and see who's the closest. How about that? That seems fair. The 2 closest people. All right, let me think of a number 1, 1, and 100. Okay, number?
72. 37.
1. 64.
99.
25.
42.
1 to 100. Huh?
33.
33, okay.
55.
55,
25.
25,
27.
47?
63.
Okay, it was 50, so 47 and 55. I think we're closest, right? I don't think I missed anybody, right? Anyone? No one was closer than that, right? Okay. I think it was
No.
you and you. I did run out a little bit over probably. Again, I'll be around. So if there's questions, and I know I'm sorry I didn't get show it to you on the screen, but feel free to come ask me with any other problems you may have had with VR or questions about getting started. I know it's a little technical, but again, try out those out of the box assets. They're really good.